this lesson is all about the color wheel. And if you have my book, The Quilter's Color Club, you can check out the chapter. I've given a whole chapter to the color wheel and color combinations. There's lots of information in here, and I just want you to realize that it's an awesome tool for quilters. So when I set out to make my book, I wanted to do a fabric color wheel. And I have to tell you, this is the finished product, but this is what went into it. I had to shop and shop and shop, and gosh, that was really such a burden, to find the right colors in the right values. So you can see that it took quite a while, and I have lots of options as I was auditioning it, but you can make your own color wheel, a very casual one, just like this. You don't have to have something really polished or finished. And in making a color wheel, you will teach yourself so much about the colors that are on it. So let's take a look at the color wheel that I've made. I use the Prang color wheel. It has 12 colors on the wheel, and I use it for its simplicity. We recognize the names of the colors, they're familiar to us, and we can then make that leap from the colors in our fabrics to the color wheel and back again. So on the color wheel, yellow up here, and violet is directly opposite. Now the primary colors are yellow, red, and blue, and you're very familiar with those. I'll just quickly point to those, yellow, blue, and red. The secondary colors are green, orange, and violet. So here's green, here is orange, and here is violet. Those are the secondary colors, and we all know those colors. We're very familiar with them from school and working with art projects. But I think the intermediate colors are the most exciting, and having taught now for 15 years, I see my students again and again go to the intermediate colors. And they're the ones between the primaries and the secondaries. So here we have yellow, and here's green, and in between is yellow-green. They're hyphenated colors. That's an easy way to remember the intermediate colors. So we have yellow-green, which is lime, chartreuse, avocado, maybe willow, in a low intensity light value. Blue-green, synonyms for blue-green are teal, aqua, turquoise. Blue-violet is iris, periwinkle, and sometimes lavender blue. Red-violet is mauve, magenta, and a really low-intensity, dark value version is mauve. So you can see that all the colors have a place on the color wheel. You just need to think about value and intensity, which you've already learned about. So from red-violet, we go to red-orange, one of my favorite colors because it's so rich, but it's not as harsh as orange. Synonyms for red-orange are terracotta, coral, salmon. And then to yellow-orange, which is another favorite of mine because it's not as harsh as yellow or as harsh as orange. It's in between. Synonyms for yellow-orange are cheddar, mango, and papaya. And I've asked myself, why are we so drawn to these colors? Because I've seen it, as I said, over and over again. We're using them. I use them a lot. And I finally figured out it's because each intermediate color, like yellow-green, contains two primaries. It has a lot of yellow, 3/4 yellow, but only 1/4 blue, and it gets the blue from green. Now I know that sounds technical, but I think it's because we see two primaries in the intermediate color. That gives it a lot of sophistication, makes it a very nuanced color. So let's look at some color combinations and how they relate to the color wheel. The first is monochromatic. And again, there are many more versions, many more examples in my book. A monochromatic color combination is just one color. And in this example, it's periwinkle or blue-violet right down here. And when you're going to work with a one color combination, you need to keep in mind that you need to vary the values and you need to bring some pattern and texture into the mix to keep it from looking boring. So I think this block has essentially periwinkle, blue-violet, but in the center fabric, I've chosen something that has some red-violet, a little bit of yellow, blue-violet, and black and white in the center fabric, and a black and white dot for the corner squares. So it has a lot of interest. The background fabric is also blue-violet, but it's an organic batik stripe, and I love using stripes in this position in blocks because it makes the block seem to move, makes the block seem expansive, as though you're having a sense of getting a sense of motion. Analogous colors are three colors side by side on the color wheel, and we're all pretty familiar with these. You could choose green, blue, green, and blue. But I invented my own combination, and it works every time, and that's 3 intermediate colors that are side by side. And I know that sounds a little overwhelming, but if you look at this block and look at the color wheel, here we have yellow-green, and you can see the yellow-green in the block. We have blue-green, you can see that also, and there's some blue-violet. So we have 3 intermediate colors in a row. Much more sophisticated, a little farther ranging in terms of an analogous combination. So give that a try. I've discovered that they all work. Yellow-green, yellow-orange, red-orange, fabulous together. Direct complements are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, and we're all very familiar with those, like red and green. But a split complement gets a little more interesting and a little more sophisticated. If you start with violet near the bottom of the color wheel and go opposite to yellow, you could split the yellow into yellow-orange and yellow-green, and you would have what's known as a split complement. A little bit softer than a direct complement because you're bringing in colors from either side into the mix, but you have that strong contrast between the yellows and the violet. A double split is really interesting, and this is where students are so surprised. This is based on red and green. If you took green and split it into yellow-green and blue-green, and you took red and split it into red-orange and red-violet, you would have a double split complement. Again, very nuanced, very sophisticated, with none of the harshness that you would get with just a straight red and green combination. Now this block is a bit of a cheap thrill. I like cheap thrills. I've taken that ombre fabric and cut the large triangles, subcut those into smaller shapes so that I can have lighter and darker values. So I think it looks faceted. It has the sense that there's actually a little bit of volume. 3 colors equidistant on the color wheel are known as a triad. This is the one that makes me think of Costa Rica. If you took blue-green over here, teal, red-violet here, magenta, and yellow-orange up here, like a papaya or mango color, you have 3 colors that are equally spaced on the color wheel. And they're automatically beautiful because they bring in all colors from all around the color wheel. So this is one of my favorites, and you'll notice again that it involves the hyphenated colors, yellow-orange, blue-green, and red-violet. I was very lucky on this block in that the fabric in the center had all those colors. That was a triad. A tetrad is 4 colors equally spaced on the color wheel. So this is even more challenging because you have 4 colors and you have to really work with them to balance the values, the intensities. In this combination I have green and red, blue-violet, and yellow-orange. So the background is the yellow-orange. The blue-violet, that's what the large triangles are. The corner squares are red and green. So it's a tetrad, 4 equally spaced colors. If you counted on the color wheel and started with yellow-orange and went 1, 2, green, 1, 2, blue-violet, 1, 2, red, 1, 2, yellow-orange. That's another way to think of it. Beautifully balanced. This was a challenging combination and a challenging block because the fabrics were so intense. So you can see that maybe lowering the intensity of some of the fabrics lessens the contrast. Now, one of the things I've noticed over the years is students have a hard time making the leap from seeing the fabric on a bolt to seeing it in a block. It's just really difficult, even when you're looking at fat quarters, to make that leap and translate what you see in the fabric into a block. And that's because as soon as you cut up fabric into smaller pieces, it loses its impact. So you have to kind of get practiced with this and try it out. This combination is one of my favorite triads. It's red, orange, blue, violet, and yellow-green. I had to think a minute there. So it's red, orange over here, which you can see in the corner, in the upper right corner. Red, orange, yellow, green, which is in the lower left corner, and blue-violet, a very, very dark blue-violet value. And I lucked out and found this wonderful Westminster fabric that had all those colors in it. So you can look at these swatches and think, well, how will they look when they are placed in a block? And here is the block. So I've used them in, the large triangles are the blue-violet, the background is the yellow-green, the corner is the red-orange, and of course the center fabric is the large square in the center. Again, you can see how wonderful King's Crown is for working with color combinations because it gives you 2 different shapes and different sizes. You have squares and you have triangles in 2 different shapes and sizes. And one more, I was in love with the Triad. So here's another example of a triadic combination of yellow, orange, blue, green, and red, violet. Now I ran out of the green swatch, so you only get to see a little tiny bit. But these colors are so dynamic. They're equally spaced on the color wheel. So here you have them as swatches, and you can see again that the fabric manufacturer has done some work for us and has created a fabric that has that color combination in it. And if you get acquainted with the color combinations and start looking at fabrics, you will see immediately that they're using the color wheel too. And I've had very expert, very experienced quilters tell me they use the color wheel. They have a color wheel on their wall in their studios because they go to it if they need to get unstuck. So, triad of yellow, orange, blue, green, red, violet, and here's the block. So you can see how I've translated where I put the colors. The yellow, orange is in the background, the blue, green is in the corner squares, the red, violet is in the large triangles, and then of course the amazing print is in the center. Now one thing to say about this block too is that the large magenta triangles, that's a great example of a magic fabric. You can see the slight gradation in value. It's one of the ombre fabrics that are so useful for quilters. And it just gives that block a little sense of life and vitality and movement. So it's a wonderful, wonderful fabric to use. So that in a nutshell is the color wheel. And I really want to encourage you to use it. My students get hooked. They lose their sense of fear. They see how fabulous it is for getting unstuck or just building something from scratch. If you love the color blue-violet, you can look to the color wheel and say, wow, what can I do? I can do a direct complement. I can do a split complement of orange, yellow, and blue-violet. Or I could do a triad or a tetrad. So it's a great way to build a combination or to fix something that isn't quite working. And the homework for this lesson is to create a king's crown block using one of the combinations from the color wheel. Now when you're working on this combination, you're working on your exercise, I want you to remember the things that you've already learned about value and intensity. Work with light, medium, and dark values, and the exercise tells you where to put the values. And also think about maintaining a consistent intensity so that the block looks really harmonious. So that's it for the color wheel. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you realized just how amazing it is. I'll see you next time.